Let's get started. Welcome everyone to today's session of the Digital Service Network Summer Event Series titled Let's Get Digital. Today we're featuring the Digital IT Partnership, a new era in government service delivery featuring Anebi Agbo, Director of Digital Services, and J.R. Sloan, State Chief Information Officer, both from the state of Arizona. I'm Kirsten Wyatt, Senior Director for the Digital Service Network from the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University, and it's my pleasure to moderate today's discussion. The Digital Service Network empowers governments to use human-centered strategies to deliver digital services that meet the needs and expectations of the people who use them. We are supported by the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation and the U.S. Digital Response, or USDR. Sharing stories and experiences about government digital services is a cornerstone of the DSN, and today's event will reflect that. Today, we'll learn about how the state of Arizona's digital and IT offices are collaborating to leverage human-centered design and digital innovation to improve service delivery across the state for residents, businesses, and visitors. This is part of our summer event series that is focused on the important relationships that make government digital transformation possible. We'll first hear from Anebi and JR with some background information about their work and their organization. And then we'll have some structured Q&A with our guests, leaving time at the end for all of you to ask questions as well. And you'll want to use the chat box as a way to ask your questions. This webinar is free, and a recording and a recap will be available online after today's event. And if you're not yet a member, we hope you'll take a minute to sign up for the Digital Service Network email list. The DSN is here to be responsive to your needs and will develop more webinars, articles, research, toolkits, and more based on what you're looking for to advance your work in your organizations. So again, if you have questions during the presentation, please use the chat feature to ask them, and I'll moderate those questions as they come in toward the end, and so our recording includes the questions as well. We will also be active in the chat, as you have seen, sharing links and information from our speakers today. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to our fabulous duo from Arizona, Anebi and JR.
Thanks for the introduction, Kristen. Pleasure to be here today.
And same from here. It's fantastic to be with you all. It's a pleasure.
So I'll say, as sort of a course of introduction, we thought it'd be helpful to kind of look back and say, like, why now here in the state of Arizona? Did it seem like it was the right time to make some investments in the digital solutions area and really standing up the office that Anebi is heading? And I'll go back, a few years. We had a project that we undertook that was one of the first opportunities that I had in my role as the Chief Information Officer to lead a project that was really cross-agency to create a new type of service delivery experience. And that was what we call our business one-stop. And so that was a project that was designed to take the process from planning, standing up, running your business, and ultimately through the life cycle if you were going to retire it as well. And that journey touched multiple agencies within the state of Arizona. It touched our Secretary of State for business registrations and trademarks, our Corporation Commission, where we do all the corporate registrations, our Department of Revenue for tax IDs and paying fees, as well as our Commerce Authority, where a lot of our small businesses come and get started. So for any of you that many of you that are involved in government, like working cross agencies comes with its challenges. Each have their unique mission, the things that are important to them. But one of the things that we really saw the opportunity to improve was creating a single journey across this entire process that sort of traverse these agencies at different points in time, and to create a unified experience for the individual. The great thing was we had the opportunity to do it, and right in the midst of it, we had a pandemic. And as we got stalled with some of the funding in the pandemic, a unique opportunity presented itself within that, where we got an engagement with U.S. Digital Response and took some time in the midst of our design process to do some, frontline human-centered design, user experience engagement. And we were able to pull folks from our Commerce Authority and from the small business boot camps. They were able to come in. We were able to walk them through and do, user engagement testing with them, get their feedback, and then because of I'll say the stall we had in our funding, but we were able to take all of that input and wrap that into the product that we ultimately delivered. And so that created, I'll say, a unique and a very positive experience for me and for my organization with the area of user experience design and human-centered design. And it was we've had good success with that project since then. So fast forward to we have a new administration that has come in. They have a high degree of focus on delivering health and human services, and a desire to say how can we do better at delivering those services. And so an area that they really wanted to see us invest in was this area of human-centered design, improving our skills and disciplines in the areas of product management. And then as we engage in both of these processes, especially with modernization efforts that are, I'll say, potentially at an all-time high in government, this opportunity to how do we look at how we're procuring? How do we buy these things? Because our traditional methods of procurement, don't always serve the project and or the outcome really well. And so I've got a procurement group within the Department of Administration that's a peer organization to me, but they're really great to engage with, and they're good partners. And so we're able to do some real explorations in terms of creative ways to approach procurement, as well as how even within our traditional methods we can I'll say work for better outcomes. So after that is kind of the backdrop of how we got here today, and through the process, I really feel very fortunate we were able to find Anebi. He comes to us with a great background and set of experience, and has really already jumped in to a number of the things that we have in flight here in Arizona.
That is a fantastic backdrop to it all. And yeah, from my perspective, state of Arizona came calling in the last year when I was exploring what next to do. I have about, for the past decade or so, I've been, working on digital experiences, design systems, websites, building custom software across a variety of industries, but never really looked or considered government as a space to work in until I saw the problem statement for state of Arizona. I saw the posting and what they were looking for, and it just seemed like a fantastic opportunity to bring a lot of my experiences to bear for the great state of Arizona. And like JR said, core focus right now, and it's going to keep evolving, is on modernizing and evolving our focus on digital experiences with an obsession on the user experience, the customer experience, and human-centered design, right, at its best, at its finest. How can we build our digital ecosystem around or oriented around the folks in our state who will be using those services? So starting from that point and then working backwards, as a user or as a customer, how would I use a service? And then helping evolve product management. One of the things JR talked on too, government tends to be generally, just by nature of government, very program focused, program heavy, with building in years, right, in PIs, versus more modular, productized. And the idea is how can we think the big modules we're building productize some more, modularize, and build solutions for our customers with faster feedback cycles. How can we iterate on those, learn, apply, or tweak, course correct, and do it again? And if I could summarize a lot of what we're doing right now, that would be it. We're looking at broad services across the board with different agencies and exploring ways to make those more modular as we build, so we can learn and obviously save on costs and efficiencies across that. there is another slide for organizational chart. JR, maybe you could speak to that a little bit for how we oriented it right now.
Sure. So in terms of I'll say the officer of the CIO, and I'll have to add another backdrop. So Arizona as a government, we are what I would call a federated environment. So there are 120, say, agencies, boards, and commissions that comprise the executive branch in Arizona, and many of those have their own IT staff, cybersecurity staff. A few of them, I'm pleased to say, are making investments, similar to Anebi, with folks that are focused more in product management and in human-centered design. But those are early investments now. That's why we're creating this central office to be as a resource for everybody. But what you can see is that there's a number of things that kind of fall under my purview. Everything from how we do our oversight and engagement processes with agencies. We have governance processes for all of the IT projects in the state, over $25,000. You'll do a bit of a business case that'll roll through our office that we'll look at. We have a number of services that we drive within our organization, including statewide voice and data network services, all of our cloud operations, data center operations, our integration and data management services. Arizona is currently within the executive branch standardized on Google Workspace as our productivity tool set. We run that as a service offering out of my office as well. We also run the state's Next Gen 911 deployment program. We are about, I'll say, 90% deployed, but we're hitting the major metropolitan areas right now, which is exciting. But we've been able to take that technology and we have, I'll say, kind of industry-leading next-gen 911 technologies throughout all the rural areas of the state, which is where we started, to ensure that they had the highest quality service there, and then work our way in, building on our experiences so that we're ready to work with our largest metropolitan areas, which is where we are right now, and that's exciting. But you can see the Digital Solutions Office kind of sits within our enterprise program area. We already had a digital government program, which was really focused on, I'll say the maintenance and delivery of some existing government services, a platform for many of our agencies' websites, payment processing solution for handling fees and whatnot. And the Digital Solutions Office has been added into this mix to bring these new areas of focus to us as a resource for the state.
Thank you, Jared. This is perfect also for the next few slides that I'll be going over. With regards to the Digital Solutions Office, the way I like to pitch it or explain it, it's more so we're more like an enabler for all the other agencies, even internally within ASET, ADOA, or you saw some of the other arms on the org chart. We're coming alongside them to amplify the work they're doing already. We're coming alongside them with a focus on the building digital experiences from a human-centered design perspective, using product management techniques, and kind of forward-looking too, but on ways to innovate further. We started off with a few initiatives that I call phase 0, foundational initiatives. Engaging with other jurisdictions, being a part of the DSN, for example, to learn what's going on in other places. Learning from USDR. And just looking at opportunities for innovation. A big part of that is also auditing the landscape right now across all of Arizona, across all agencies, for opportunities to improve systems or to pitch ideas on what to focus on, but also looking at problem areas, which in the next slide, we're going to look at a few of those things we've identified. So one of those has been, what are the issues we have? We've seen things like, and I know many jurisdictions from multiple conversations, these are not unique by any means to Arizona. So design standards, when you have a federated environment or enterprise type environment, inevitably you're going to have silos and different design standards, which can become a pain at some point when you're trying to build a cohesive or unified front for the projects you work on. So that's something we've seen here. Procurement, we have a fantastic state procurement office SPO, but then multiple agencies also have their own ways of procuring. And again, in a federated environment, that becomes a challenge sometimes with how do I align with another agency if they have a different procurement process, still legal, no one's going to jail, but different than how I run mine. How do we align that without adding months, right, potentially to a procurement process or years in some instances? And then the lack of cohesive approach in the business applications we're deploying. These are just top three. There are multiple things we're seeing, and we did a design sprint exercise about a month ago with multiple agencies, and we identified a lot of interesting problem areas to work on. But these are some examples. I'll go to the next slide, and I'll talk about 4 broad pillars. Again, it's in a state of flux and evolving, but this was a great way to categorize some of the focuses right now. And we have product management under DSO. Digital innovation is part of that. Human-centered design, which I feel like is an underlying foundation for everything we do. And then agile procurement. If we're trying to fix or tackle all of these things, if procurement is still very waterfall, then it impedes progress on that. So tied to all of this is working closely with the centralized state procurement office, but also the procurement offices in multiple agencies to look at ways to innovate in the space of procurement. Are there tools, are there processes we can work on? Are there design sprint workshops we could do around procurement? Or a favorite one we're looking at right now is innovation challenges. Potentially with multiple vendors to look at challenge statement we're trying to build, have a few different MVPs or solutions proposed, and then we can down select from that. So that's just one example. And then a big part of what we're doing is a community of practice, which is one way of trying to fix the issue of multiple silos across agencies. A community of practice to bring together practitioners from all agencies, the product folks, the design folks, the engineers. So it's very cross-functional for us to think and learn through best practices for design, for human-centered design, best practices for product management, best practices for agile procurement, and look at opportunities for innovation. So that has been, the feedback for that has been overwhelmingly positive. Lots of folks are joining that, and it's just been very interesting to see different parties across the state brought together in a single cohesive place. And Jared, I don't know if you want to add any color to that, any more before we move on.
No, let's keep going.
Okay. Another thing I was going to share before we go into Q&A, that's a perfect example of one way the community of practice could be deployed. So JR spoke about the business one stop earlier on, and that's a project that is ongoing. One of the things that I worked with the business one stop folks, and when I came in, was putting in place a framework, like a matrix for prioritizing what projects to work on, which things to go in the backlog, which things are more urgent and pressing. Like if you think of the Eisenhower matrix, right, of what's urgent, what's important and urgent, and what's not important and not urgent. So something like that, not necessarily using those words in the framework, but we created that template to help prioritize some lower hanging fruits, burning items, and longer term things to work on with business one stop. And that was a very interesting project. The team was able to deploy that and use that to make some much needed fixes. It's also going to be available as a template. I think Michaela is going to share that, but that was just one example, and also shared through our, will be shared through our community of practices. One way where we deploy something for a specific application or use case, but now everyone as part of the community of practice is also going to have access to the same thing, and now those who are part of the DSN will have access to it.
Well, great. And I think we've had some questions coming in the chat, so that's wonderful. And then just to note that Michaela also pasted 2 of those items from the presentation that are included in the DSN library, both their organizational chart and then also that recommendation matrix. But To kick things off, would love, the theory of this, or the concept of this series is all about relationships that are powering digital transformation. And so I'd love to hear from both of you about why the strong relationship between digital service and IT is so important for improving service delivery, and the advice that you might give to folks who are on this webinar who are looking to strengthen or improve that relationship, ways to make that happen.
Okay, well, I'll say for me, it starts with a mindset that okay, yeah, why I might be the, we'll say, chief IT guy for the state of Arizona. The success of IT projects and how our services actually need to work, right? It's not enough that the technology is up and running. It's got to be doing something meaningful for the people that it's intended to serve. I also view that my job is a role of stewardship. We have tax dollars that are being flowing through and that are paying my salary, pay for the systems, right? And the people that are being served by those, whether it's there's clients, there's constituents, there's lots of different terms. At the end of the day, whether we'll call them customers, they all deserve a good experience. They deserve to have what is the least friction path to get the service that they're entitled to. And so we've got to be thinking about not how do we prevent them from getting that service. And we need to make sure that we're not, I think we've come through a period of time where sometimes systems get designed by government people, with the government in mind about what the government needs to get out of it, but not necessarily with the mindset of, well, how is it starting in the shoes of the person that needs to receive this service, and think about where are they, how are they interfacing with the system, down to the level of, well, what's the device they have, what is the level of potential education that they have, what language constraints are they dealing with, and how are we meeting them where they are and making it easy. So I view that whole continuum as that's our responsibility. That is our stewardship from a technology perspective, is to partner with the business who's running the programs to try and deliver those services, to ensure that the technology is doing everything it can to support the business in delivering those services and doing it efficiently. And I think we've learned over time that that process of starting with the customer, working backwards, that's going to give us the best result. Because if we start at a place where we know all, inside we know all the acronyms, we know the terms, we know the various terminology, and our customers don't know that. And if that's what we put in front of them, we should not be surprised if they get confused. And it takes them longer to complete the process. There's lots of errors involved. It takes more time and effort from us, from a government perspective, because when we put a confusing form or application in front of them, what are they going to do? They got to pick up the phone and call somebody and have it explained to them. And that's probably the most expensive thing that we could do to provide service, and it's going to slow things down. So, that's where the investments now, and why I think this is the right time. And I think across America, we have great examples of applications and apps on our phones, things that we interact with on a daily basis that deliver services to us that do so in a pretty easy manner and take a lot of friction out of it. And so those are the things Arizona is not doing this alone, right? Multiple states have stood up, similar offices. And frankly, when we went down this path, we learned from others. We said, hey, we looked at what Colorado has done. We looked at what Maryland's done. We looked at what Pennsylvania's done. We talked with the Digital Service Network and said, guys, help us. We shared some of the vision and where we saw gaps and how we felt it was going to fit into our structure, and we got some great advice. And that's what I think is awesome about this community, is to be able to come out here and have other folks that are traveling a similar path and are willing to share their knowledge, their experience, artifacts. There's not a lot of intellectual property that we hold on tightly to in government, where everyone's pretty happy to share what's working and help to provide solutions for areas where you might be struggling.
Thank you for saying that, Jera. And just to, I think to emphasize that point, it's I see the relationship between the digital solutions office and IT as a very mutually beneficial one, right? The more we can help projects succeed by doing a lot of the research up front and looking at UX, how would this apply, user experience for the end user for those systems, the better IT feels, and success rate goes up with successful implementations, and they like us more, and then we want to do more work together. So it's very beneficial, across the board. I think as we essentially work in lockstep together.
You talked about an obsession with human-centered strategies, and we have a great question here from Rebecca at US Digital Response, who I know organization that was very important as you were standing up your digital service operation. So as you're thinking about this obsession with centering the people that you serve, what advice do you have about convincing others or convincing people outside of your organization the value of that approach or any new approach related to digital delivery, whether that's agile or product focus? So, any tips or tricks that the two of you have learned from your respective posts on how you really promote that vision and those values that I think JR spoke so eloquently of?
Maybe why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, sure. I think part of the answer is even in the question, as you one of the things I see, there is no value of new approaches, and so how do you move from proposing widgets more to outcomes, right? More valuable. I think that's a more valuable approach, to walk back from the outcomes you desire, and then sharing examples about those outcomes. Forget the solution, forget the how. And I had a boss who would say, always sell the sizzle, not the steak. I can't say that without smiling, but it's like, how do we sell the sizzle, not the steak? So the outcomes, what is desired, what we're looking for, and then working back from there to share those examples for other places where the sizzle has been awesome, people liked it, right? And then like doing that again and again. For me, that's one way. And then trust is a big aspect of that, building trust. At the end of the day, people resonate with those whom they trust. And for me in this role, a lot of my job, to be honest, is building trust and rapport across multiple agencies, multiple leaders. And to build trust, right, you have to understand, you have to, resonate, you have to paint a picture. So it's like, oh, I get it now. And that's a lot of what I do really is looking at the problems, trying to solve, relating to that and proposing actual solutions and outcomes or solutions that will get them to that outcome faster. And then buttressing that with examples. But ultimately, I'd say even it's a trust building exercise with the folks you're working with.
Yeah, I think what I would add on to that is, we have to continue to show why. And so it's not just, we can seek to build trust, but the way we also build trust is delivering. And so we have to take these principles where I think we certainly can enter the conversation by saying, hey, the things that we've traditionally done are no longer producing the outcomes that we believe the business needs. So we're going to take a different approach with the objective to achieve a better outcome. But we ultimately have to show that outcome. We have to show that this investment up front, produces a better day one application and a better day two application, right? Where we don't end up where, there's those classic stories, right? We, with good intent, government, officials, our procurement, our suppliers and vendor partners, we queue up $20-30 million and we spend a few years and we work really hard and we grind at one another through the process, ultimately get to the finish line and find out that we forgot to talk to the people that are actually using this thing. right? And we can find out day one, like, oh, we missed that. Well, how do we miss that? Well, okay, so let's stop, when you're doing something wrong, it's like, stop doing the thing that's hurting you and do something different. So we're going to learn things through this process, and our objective is to produce better applications that better serve our citizens, from the start.
Another quick point on that, Jerry, you just made me think of something, and the value of when we think about de-risking projects, and I think a really great way to de-risk is to do it in increments, in small increments. So why wait a few years or a year when we can have check-ins, right? Every 3 months, maybe. Is this adding value? Do we need to course correct? It would save us a lot of grief. And part of when I mentioned agile procurement earlier, that's an example of agile procurement, like baking that into the procurement language, into the RFPs and contracts up front. So vendors are aware of that as we work with them to say, hey, we're going to have these check-ins. If it's not doing X, Y, Z, right, we can pause the project or stop the project. Better we stop, right? Sunk cost $1 million versus waiting till it's $10 million in. And then the sunk cost issue, sinks in. No pun intended. It's like, I already spent 10, it's 20 more to go. Do I stop now? So just de-risking that altogether by maybe adding speed bumps along the way with projects or check-ins to make sure it's adding value and ultimately leading towards the desired outcome in the first place, and then course correcting.
So thinking about selling the sizzle and not the steak, and thinking about digital innovation and sometimes having to work with legacy systems, Matthew has the question about how you're able to pair digital innovation with the legacy systems that you're currently working with or working within.
So that could take, I'll say, more time and effort, for sure. We've got an agency that's working through a modernization off their mainframe, but they are taking a modular approach to replacing the modules within this application. So it's taking the additional effort up front to create a common data interchange layer that can serve both the legacy application as well as the new application. And with that data interchange layer, we're able then to introduce the modernized components while still allowing some of the back-end legacy components to continue to function. So it takes more planning, it's taking a little more effort, but it takes a system that, falls into this, $50 to $100 million type category, lets you break it. We're breaking it down into that $2 to $5 million increment, and we're able to iterate. We're able to adjust as we go, I think it's already, I'll say, yielding better results for us. So it does take additional thought and planning, especially when you are dealing with some of these legacy systems where they're just big monoliths, right? And the start thinking is, well, because it's one big application, I can't replace just part of it, I got to replace the whole thing. Well, you may not have to replace the whole thing, but it may take, I'll say, more planning to take a different approach. And it may seem like it's going to cost a little more up front, but with the flexibility that you gain, I think it's a good trade-off.
Anything to add on that, Anebi?
No, JR hit the nail on the head with that.
Perfect. Katrina has a great question about the maturity of product management as a discipline in your organization, as well as in the business areas of the agencies that you're serving or working with.
I'll take a stab at that first. It's very across the board. Some agencies, and this might be a non-answer, some agencies are more mature than others. And part of the assessment we're doing is seeing who's more mature. I know in agencies, in their product management or human-centered design journey, because then they will need less support from us. We'll still support as needed and come alongside them, but some agencies will need more support. So we'll help them beef that up. Again, the community of practice is a perfect way to do that, where it's training for all, workshops, community, but also like super focused attention to some agencies that might need more help. It's a push-pull approach. We're sharing ideas push, and agencies can also reach out to pull, to engage where help is needed. But it's it's uneven, I would say, across the states. Some agencies are a lot more mature than others. And part of my job really is helping beef that up within ASET, within ADOA, but also across all agencies, such that at the end of the day, we all have robust, mature product management functions in each agency, and we can keep growing. Jared, I don't know if you have any more to
No,
add on that.
I agree. I have a very similar answer in that, the answer is it varies. And here's the key thing though, I think is in some agencies, they have, I'll say that maybe our worst case scenario would be they invest in a technology, they just run the program, and it's sort of like they drive the technology into the ground until it doesn't work anymore. And then they're like, oh, we need a new one. And it's like, no one's thinking about, the ongoing, how this investment in this solution, it has to serve the business, it has to serve our customers. How are we measuring how it's doing that? How are we looking at the ongoing life cycle? How are we looking ahead for the investments? And with, solutions where largely, I see more and more, we're moving to software as service models and platforms, where these solutions can grow with us. And so we need to bring that kind of product management discipline, because we're not coding something top to bottom and it's fixed in its nature until we, pour another pile of money into it. These are things that are going to iterate, they're going to grow, they're going to bring new features and capabilities to us as a government that we got to figure out which of those makes sense and how do they serve, whether they're serving the business internally, they're serving our caseworkers, they're serving our clients and constituents. That's where we need that product management discipline, which is that kind of unique straddling of technology and business and process, and is thinking about how do we ensure that this investment is really maximizing the return to all the stakeholders.
Another thing I'll add to that, one thing I've discovered with multiple agencies as well is, sometimes there are folks that are already doing product management, just not officially in that function.
Right.
Title is not product manager. I know many jurisdictions in governments, it's similar issue. The title is not product manager, but they've been doing that for X amount of years now, pretty dang good at it. Maybe need to brush up on a few technicalities, but it's like, you're practically a product manager. So that's one of the things we're coming across for folks like that. How do we, help them? Like, yes, you're a product manager. Maybe enable them with, some training around that. And then we have the agencies as well that, one product managers and no one is doing that, and they want to hire externally or hire from a different agency. What does that look like? So it's very interesting across the board. But the most fun ones have been those who've been doing product management already and don't even know it. It makes my job easier because I'm like, hey, you're a product manager. Let's just maybe fix a few things and you're good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your communities of practice. And I think Katrina beat me to the punch here, sharing that your product management community of practice is intriguing, but would love to hear more about any advice you have for attendees interested in standing up their own communities in their own organizations, and other ways that you've leveraged that as a way to promote the work that you're doing.
Oh man, it's a work in progress. I don't even feel qualified at all to speak about that because we're iterating as we go along. And right now we have a primary community of practice. We might break it off into centers of excellence or something like that eventually. But right now it's just actually the digital solutions community of practice, because that allows us to add some nuance to what we can share about. We're doing UX, agile procurement, AI, like a bunch of different things. And then we'll reassess at some point and double down on certain pillars within that. But it's very much a work in progress. A big part of it has been interviewing the folks they want in the community of practice to see what the needs are, doing assessments for how we can add value and asking questions. Polls, surveys, a fantastic example that have been helpful for us as we start and grow a community of practice. Just getting a lay of the land and seeing what the needs are and what areas to focus on will be the biggest advice I have beyond best practices and what platforms to use, etc.
A great question here from Rebecca. In tight budgets, how are you navigating selling that value add for digital service efforts to stakeholders and legislators?
So the way I would articulate that is, I tried to touch on that earlier, which is we're looking to make investments more upfront in, a classic one in the construction industry is measure twice, cut once. Let's put more effort into planning, making sure that the products that we're going to produce and deliver are going to meet the requirements of those they're intended to serve. Not just the I think a classic problem is you say, well, we got funding to replace the system, and we run off and we say, okay, well, what does it need to do? And we just document what the current system does, and then we put that in an RFP and put that on the street and ask people to deliver us one of those. Those processes, like, I don't think we want the same thing we have today just running faster. We need to have a different approach, and so we need to focus on, well, what are the business outcomes that need to be achieved? Who are the people that need to be served? And then design our systems, not based on what the last system does, but what is it that we need a system to do to carry us forward to the future? Again, from a legislator perspective, I understand and I appreciate that they feel stewardship, right? They are representing the taxpayers, and they're working as Rebecca said, right, in a time with tight budgets. They're making choices about funding this and not funding that. And so if they're going to put dollars towards something, they feel accountable for it. They need to feel good about the dollars that they spent. So we do need to be, showing them, like, if you put dollars towards, this initiative, we're applying this to ensure that we're going to get the maximum return for those dollars spent. And that when we bring that system to fruition, it does the right things, as it evolves and as it grows to continue to serve its constituents.
Everything JR said.
Would love to hear more about, as we saw from your org chart, um, the the office of the CIO has a lot going on, and so the needs of the digital service office isn't the only priority or goal of the office of the CIO. So how do you find commonality amongst your potentially competing priorities and goals, and what is it that the two of you do in managing your relationship to find that commonality?
So again, I go back to a predisposition of we're stewards of the dollars that are coming through. Part of my organization's role is governance, which it shouldn't just be a bunch of gates that you have to pass through, to check boxes. It needs to be value added. So my objective is that governance needs to help ensure or assure project success. And when I look at project success, we can't be, it just can't be done without the type of investment that we're looking at here and what we talked about today relative to the digital solutions. How can we have a successful project if we haven't ensured that we've, bring the people that it's serving, into the requirements process, and bring the people that are the day-to-day users of it into the requirements process. If we haven't talked to them, we're not talking to those folks, then we've missed something fundamental. And so I just view it as part of that stewardship, mindset, and the fact that I'm not going to keep my job just by deploying technology. If I want to be proud about the work that I'm doing, I've got to feel like we're serving people better today than we were yesterday, and then we're going to serve them better tomorrow because we're doing the right things today. And those are I say those are the principles that need to be active in order to be thinking about a digital solutions office investment or that type of thing, is to you got to care about who you're serving.
Yeah. And to add a little bit to that, it might feel at first that we're putting more speed bumps with projects, but it's necessary at the beginning, especially as you do those assessments and do the research, talk with customers, those who will actually be using these services up front. As a bit of practice of that, inevitably will be faster with projects. But naturally, as we do those, human-centered design exercises up front with UX research and, the mock-ups and designs, and having our constituents look at those and score them and things like that. As we build a practice of doing that, things, will hasten up eventually, but also it's helping our different agencies de-risk projects and our IT teams de-risk projects longer term. So it ends up working really well as a natural way to prioritize which things to take on first. It's like, okay, which ones have we done the research for and we have the green light and we're ready to rock, versus which ones are just in ideation and early stage. So it stops the problem of just trying to hit the gas and finish a project faster, which completing a project doesn't necessarily mean success, right? So as we work through together with IT, we're figuring out what are good metrics to look at, not just completion, but successful delivery of projects as we go along.
We have a question here from Christian, who is studying UX at Arizona State University. And he wants to know if you're aware of any potential legislative action about standardizing web design across agencies as part of state statute. And he references an effort in Utah with a bill that happened there.
So I'm not aware of any legislation active in Arizona on that front. Within our digital government program, I mean, we have established some, I'll say, design and style guides, and for the website platform that we manage out of our office, we provide agencies with some we'll say templates and help them work within a content management system so they can focus on the content and not coding HTML and which is, I'll say, practices of the past, and some of those things are still hanging around out there. So we've been working through, I'll say, trying to bring some standardization. I'm always cautious about doing those types of things through legislation, because you might be surprised at what the outcome of what legislation means. And what goes in with an intent can come out looking very different. So I guess I would probably I try to fall on the side of, let's hope that people want to do the right thing. Let's bring forward what the right thing is to do and help people adopt it. So I'll say straight up, I don't believe there's any legislative efforts to try and force any standardization. I will expect that we're going to see some activity as we see, like the federal legislation coming down around accessibility and those types of things. So we're going to have some additional focus in our websites and our web applications over the next couple of years, not only assessing where we are. We've been doing I think a lot of the pre-work to be prepared for that, but I know we're going to find stuff, and there's going to be work that needs to be done to shore up some of those things that aren't going to make the grade. So that's one of the things I would probably be more looking for in the near term.
Great, and definitely has been a topic of our Chief Digital Service Officer Community of Practice discussions as well. All right, so as we near the end of our time together, would love to close with a question for both of you, and would love to know one thing that you're most proud of when it comes to your collaboration and working together.
Let's see, there's so many. Which one do we start with?
All right, well, I'll tell you, I'll go first. I can put Anebi in front of anybody, and he will represent not only himself, but the principles that we're bringing forward well. He's presented at the cabinet. He's presented across a number of our agencies. We're still early days in the existence of this office, and a lot of people still have questions around, well, even though we've said here's what it means, they still want to know, but what does it really mean, and what are you really trying to do? And we're continuing to work through that, but I think that again, the partnership aligns, I'll say, at kind of at the heart level of principles for me, and what I want to see us doing in terms of solution delivery and service delivery for government services. And to know that I've got someone with the skill set of Anebi, helping to develop and lead the communities of practice and the disciplines out there. That makes me feel very, very positive about the future.
Thank you, JR. It's awesome. From my perspective, so JR, from my perspective, I think the big thing that I appreciate is the level of support from JR and other leaders. It means the world, right? As we work together. Again, I can always use, I think the question about legislation made me think about using the carrot or the stick. But it's good to know I have the backings of the top dogs, so like JR. But in all honesty, like I think that's been the biggest thing, just having the enablement and support of leadership, the state CIO and Lisa and Suzanne and Chuck and others across the state has been phenomenal, because we can work really well together. Sometimes with a vision from them, and then Digital Solutions Office and other agencies can help implement that. But it has been the biggest thing for me, and while I'm sticking around and excited for the future.
All right, well, we've talked about carrots and sticks and sizzle and steak. And so I feel like on those notes, we need to wrap things up, and just want to give a huge thanks to both of you for joining us today and sharing more about the great work you're doing in Arizona. Just a reminder that today's conversation will be summarized with key takeaways on digitalservicenetwork.org. Want to give a shout out to our Georgetown University student analyst, Serena Pradham, who helped organize today's event, and our community manager, Michaela Caudill, for all of her work in making today happen. And we hope to see you at a future DSN event. Our next session in this Let's Get Digital Summer Event Series is next week. So 1 week from today, Tuesday, July 23rd at noon Pacific or 3 Eastern, and we'll be featuring the City of Boston's digital service and procurement teams, talking about how digital service and procurement are collaborating to improve government services. Please take a minute to share the Digital Service Network with your personal networks and colleagues if you think they may benefit from this work and ongoing events. We'd also appreciate your feedback on how today went, so please take a quick event survey as well. So with that, we will wrap things up, but just want to give a huge thanks to JR and Anebi for joining us today and sharing more about their great work in the state of Arizona. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.